figure out what I would like to plant this year. Guess what I got? Hello friends! I'm so excited because I finally pulled the trigger and I got a freeze dryer. Yes, a freeze dryer. It's a big purchase and it took me a while to actually pull the trigger and do it, but I'm so excited and I could not be more stoked. This was one of my resolutions or goals for 2023 was to purchase a freeze dryer. It's something that I've wanted for several years now and that I've done a lot of research on, and especially the more that I get into gardening and health and preserving things, I just think it's a good investment. So we'll see if it's a good investment. So this is where I have it. I have it on top of my fridge because I have a very small place. It is it's a tiny little cottage, so I don't have a ton of space. So I put it on top of my fridge, which looks a little comical. And okay, I've never seen anyone else do this, and so I'm thinking to myself, like, is there a reason? Why haven't other people done this? Is there something that is maybe a bad idea about this? But I don't know. So if you know something that I don't, let me know. But for right now, it is on top of my fridge. It fits great there. I think it will be a little bit of a pain, just, if I have to pour liquid into the trays, that might be a little bit tough. I might have to break out the step stool for it. But it's been fine just putting trays of things into it. That hasn't really been an issue so far. So we'll see. It's kind of an experimentation just to see how I like it and see how it works. It's nice to have it out of the way, not in my living room or anything. It's kind of tucked away, and yeah, I'm hoping that it'll work well. Getting it up there was a little bit of a rodeo. I have to have 4 people to get it up there because these suckers are not light. So that was kind of comical, but we got it figured out and no one died, so it's fine. Last night I ran the first cycle through. I just did a loaf of bread like they suggest, just to kind of absorb all of any off-gassing or fumes from it being a new product. So that went really well. It freeze-dried everything really well. Today I want to do my first real cycle. I'm gonna do, I think, a couple different things. This is kind of just an experimentation round, so we'll see how it goes. I want to try spaghetti sauce, or the tomato sauce that I just canned probably like 2 weeks ago. I went through and took all of the tomatoes that I had from my garden and made it into tomato sauce, just kind of like a basic tomato sauce that I can add things to, and canned a bunch of it. What I'm hoping will happen if I freeze dry it, I'm hoping it'll just take up less space because they're in like quart-sized jars, and if there's no liquid in it, if there's no water in it, I'm thinking it's gonna shrink down, and I can maybe fit 3 of those quart-sized jars maybe in one. I don't know, we'll see. It's totally an experiment. So I'm hoping it'll be a space saver and just an easier way to preserve the food from my garden. So I'm kind of gonna do some experimentation today and try a couple different things. I want to try the tomato sauce. I want to try the blueberries from the garden last year. I still have a ton of blueberries in my freezer. I also have a ton of zucchini in my freezer that I want to freeze dry all of that. It's starting to get a little bit, I don't know if freezer burn is the right word, but it looks very icy and I don't want it to get freezer burn. So I'm going to try and do the zucchini that's in my freezer. And really, I'm just going to go through my freezer and see what's in there and see what I can freeze dry and do some experimenting. So, wish me luck. So I'm just sitting down with my breakfast here and I'm gonna go through some of these seed catalogs. I'm not gonna lie, I don't exactly know what I'm looking for specifically. This is still fairly new to me, but I just wanna kind of get an idea. I wanna read the descriptions. I wanna read all the characteristics of the different varieties and figure out what I would like to plant this year. And honestly, some of it is just gonna be looking up definitions of words that I don't understand, and that's just part of learning something new. Is there's going to be kind of a new language with it that I'm going to have to learn. So I'm just going to sit down and kind of look through these magazines. I kind of have an idea of what I want to change and do a little bit differently this time. I really want to hone in on the most food that I can grow for the least amount of money, and think about like, okay, what are the things that I would already be buying from the grocery store, and what are the things that are a lot more expensive at the grocery store that I can grow myself to save money. I really want this to pencil out. Like this isn't gonna be sustainable if I'm just doing this for a hobby. Like it has to make sense, it has to pencil out. And so one thing that I'm doing to kind of help keep track of that is I got a binder for tracking all my expenses, and I would like to kind of track how much I actually grow too. That way I can see how much money I'm saving, and then I can look back on previous years and think about like, okay, this is what I used, this is what I didn't use, this is what made sense, was worth the money, this wasn't worth the money. And I can compare the years and really hone in on like, how do I become a better gardener and grow my own food in a way that really makes sense and is sustainable. A couple things I want to change too is I want to make things easier and more streamlined. A good example of this is last summer I grew delicata squash, which were amazing and grew so well. My squash in general last year just did so amazing. But it's a lot more time consuming to prepare that vegetable, and you don't get as much meat from it. It takes the same amount of time to cut up a delicata squash as it does to cut up a butternut squash or a spaghetti squash or an acorn squash. But with all of those other vegetables, you're getting so much more food for the same amount of work. So I also realized with the delicata squash, it did not keep as well. It did not store as well. Those were the first vegetables that started to kind of shrivel up and get kind of foamy on the inside, and they just didn't save as well. And my spaghetti squash, my acorn squash, they are still doing so well. I haven't had to do anything for preservation. I've just had them in a cold, dark space, and they have preserved so well. So I want to have more things like that. So I think I'm going to swap out delicata squash for a butternut squash instead. It's going to have just as much nutrition. I'm thinking it's going to grow just as well, but I think I'll just get more bang for my buck. Another thing that I want to switch up is I really want to plant more tomatoes. I'm not a big tomato person, so last year I thought I don't really need to plant that many tomatoes because I don't eat that many tomatoes, which is true. But what I do eat a lot of is tomato sauce. I eat so much tomato sauce, and organic tomato sauce from the store is pretty expensive, and I really just want to cut out going to the grocery store as much as possible. I don't like going to the grocery store. I just don't like it. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of people. It's so expensive. And I just don't like it. So if I can grow as much food as possible at home, I want to try and do that. That makes so much more sense to me. And I know the ingredients that are in it, and especially now that I have the freeze dryer, I don't have to go through canning it, which canning it really wasn't a big deal. But I know myself, and I just don't prefer it. I don't prefer it. So if I can freeze or freeze dry or ferment for my main avenues of preservation, I would prefer that. So I would like to plant more tomatoes, like several more plants. I want to maybe do specifically a paste tomato, like an Amish paste, or I'm not sure. I need to look into that a little bit more. But I want to get a tomato that is a little bit bigger than the Romas that I grew last year, because I want to have more meat and more tomato and less skin to deal with. I also want to nix radishes. I don't even know why I grew radishes last year. I don't even like them. And they sucked. They, for some reason, were so flippin' spicy that I didn't even eat hardly one of them. And that just felt like such a waste, and they took up space in my garden, and that was just such a waste of my time and effort. So what I think I'm gonna do instead is I wanna grow carrots instead. Carrots are pretty cheap to buy at the store, but organic carrots that you grow in your garden, they taste so much better. They just taste way carrotier. So I want to grow carrots instead. I think that they'll grow really well around here. I think I'm going to do a Danver half lawn. It's a thicker, wider carrot that's a little bit shorter, and it's going to be better for preservation. It's going to save and store well. So I think I'm going to try to do that. I definitely want to grow more cabbage. I definitely want to grow more broccoli, cauliflower. Those are things that I enjoyed so much last year that I'm still eating broccoli and cauliflower. Well, mainly just cauliflower. I've pretty much eaten all my broccoli from this last year. So if I can grow like twice as much of the broccoli that I grew last year, I think that would be such a win. And then maybe even planting in the fall too. We'll see. I'm not going to do a bunch of different types of lettuces. I had several different types of lettuces and Swiss chard. And the Swiss chard got eaten up by birds. That was really the only thing in my whole garden that got eaten up by birds. And I know that that can be solved by bird netting, but I just didn't really eat it. And if I'm not going to eat it, I'm not going to grow it. So what I did eat a lot of is I ate a ton of arugula. That was my favorite green when I went out to the garden, I just wanted to eat the arugula in my salads. And I kind of felt out of obligation that I needed to get some spinach and lettuce from the rest of the garden, just because I felt like, well, I grew it, I'm not gonna waste it, but I would rather just eat the arugula. So what I think I'm gonna do is just grow arugula. Another thing that I liked about the arugula is it's a flat leaf and it takes way less time to wash and rinse and make sure that there's no bugs in it, where a lot of the lettuce that I grew had kind of like a curly edge, and there's a lot of little nooks and crannies for bugs to hide in, and I don't really want to deal with like having to really meticulously inspect every leaf and make sure there's no critters in there. So I think I'm just gonna go with the arugula. It also lasted a long time. The arugula that I grew last year grew for like 4 months, and a lot of the lettuce that I grew didn't grow that long. So I think I'm just gonna do arugula and maybe spinach. Spinach was pretty good too, and I like that with spinach I can cook it and things as well. So I'm going to simplify that a little bit. I want to add some sweet things into my garden. I don't have any fruit trees or berry bushes or anything like that. My parents have some fruit trees and some blueberry bushes and some raspberry bushes, and they always share with me if I help them harvest. So I'm sure I'll be getting some of that, but I would like some sweeter things from my garden. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus on some cantaloupe. I did plant cantaloupe last year, but it just died. It didn't do well. So I'm gonna focus on getting some better ambrosia cantaloupe and babying it a little bit more, because I would love to have something sweet that is growing in my garden. So the results ended up being that I put in this jar of tomato sauce and one of these jars of tomato sauce as well, and it ended up, after being freeze-dried, blended, turned into a powder, it ended up fitting perfectly with actually a little bit of extra space in one of these small jars. So all I'll have to do is take a couple teaspoons of this and then add water to it, and I'll be able to have a serving of spaghetti sauce. So that is a huge space saver. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to get a freeze dryer, is because it takes up so much less space in my food storage. So I just think that's pretty cool. So I'm excited to rehydrate this and see what it tastes like. Now this isn't set up for long-term storage. If I was doing long-term storage, I would probably use like a Mylar bag and an oxygen absorber. This is going to be used in the next couple weeks or so. So I'm excited to see how it tastes. I'm super excited to keep experimenting with my freeze dryer and seeing how much food I can preserve, and hopefully it'll kind of streamline the process a little bit easier. So we'll see. I think that's all for today's video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.